This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it's Tuesday. It's January 30th, 2024. A lot of news today. We're starting out with the Mayorkas impeachment, which is going on right now in the House. Their impeachment articles are coming forward. I think he will be impeached. I think this is one trial that the Democrats are going to have a hard time defending with the border crisis that's going on. Right now there's a truck convoy which is headed down to the border. It's headed down to the border in three places. We did an article on it yesterday, and this mirrors the truck protests that are going on in Europe. There's the gentleman right there, Mayorkas, and I don't think he's got a case. He's certainly left the borders wide open. And we have what is described, I think, properly as an invasion. We do not want to have open borders. I'm in favor of active immigration, but it's got to be legal. We've got to make sure we don't let the criminals into the country, the drug dealers. I'm especially concerned about the unaccompanied children. That's a telltale sign of suspicion for sex slavery. They're appointed to show up somewhere in the United States and at a certain time, otherwise somebody dies back in their country of origin. By the way, you can follow us on X at Corsi Jerome 1, the number 1, and on Substack at jeromecorsiphd.substack.com. We'll be posting much more on Substack, including this week. The other story that's caught my attention, Iran. They were killed in the Middle East. I see on the internet, on X, there's a lot of questioning as to whether it's a false flag to take attention away from the border crisis, whether it is, in fact, how do they get, it appears to have been a U.S. drone that did the killing. Why wasn't that drone detected? How did they get the drone if it was Iran? I mean, there's a lot of questions here, and the story doesn't fit together in the pieces we've been given. But this is fairly typical from the mainstream media, where the White House spokesperson says that these 3 Marines died for the administration. No, they did not die for the Biden administration. I'm sorry. They died for the United States of America, not for President not, our demented president. This is elderly abuse as far as I'm concerned. And Biden, I don't know if he knows where he is. Obama is behind the scenes, I'm sure, pulling the strings and preparing to have Michelle come on board as the Democratic candidate. So there's a lot going on in the news today, and I want to pick up on some stories dealing today with this whole issue of wokeness. And so we have, Chris, if you'll play this clip of this Noah Harari, who is a agenda setter for our agenda contributor for the WEF. This guy is so nutcase, they don't want to admit he's part of the World Economic Forum, or has been one of their major players, receiving probably the most attention of anybody coming out of the World Economic Forum. But Chris, if you'll play this little clip we have, it's about 1 minute, 20 seconds. I have to scroll up here so we can see. There we go. Go ahead and play it.
In the book, if I understand it correctly, you argue that actually the amazing breakthrough that we are experiencing right now not only will potentially make our life better, but they will create, and I quote you, new classes and new class struggles, just as the Industrial Revolution did. Can you elaborate for us?
Yes, in the Industrial Revolution, we saw the creation of a new class of the urban proletariat, and much of the political and social history of the last 200 years involved what to do with this class and the new problems and opportunities. Now, we see the creation of a new massive class of useless people. As computers become better and better in more and more fields, there is a distinct possibility that computers will outperform us in most tasks and will make humans redundant. And then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for?
Do you have an answer in the book?
At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty shocking, actually. But the unfortunate part is he means it. This is actually part of the entire deal of what they are pushing at the World Economic Forum, which is this whole complete idea that we need to have machines and computers and human beings are useless. And of course, they're coming to say, look how much we're going to improve your life. You know, the World Economic Forum is this globalism is going to be good for you. Of course, they also then subsequently say, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. So the whole idea that we've got a structure here where we are going to deal with, you know, what reality being constructed by this World Economic Forum is very shocking. I mean, it's quite frankly, they mean it. And if they're going to say openly that they want to eliminate human beings, where are we going with this? Chris, I'd like you to comment on this, if you would, before we move on to the next story.
I am glad you asked, because the tail end of what Harari said was very telling. The idea was to keep people occupied with drugs and computer games because they were useless. Keep in mind, isn't this the foundation of that little theory that ran across people's minds over the last 50, 60 years about a certain government organization with 3 letters allowing the crack and cocaine to come through to America to keep people occupied, if you will?
Well, certainly the CIA has been part of the drug trade since before World War II, and I don't see any reason why they've quit. And the open borders are open intentionally. The Democrats have always thought they could make Texas blue by a huge influx of Spanish. Of course, they're moving them all over the country and putting them up in hotels. This is a disaster. It's a human disaster. And we have what's going on, I think, in these moves against human beings is intentional. That's the hard part to get your head around. And the bottom line is they're saying, you know, why don't we exhale carbon dioxide? And of course, in this whole climate hoax, carbon dioxide is the noxious chemical making the earth too warm for us to inhabit. And so therefore, why don't you all just do us a favor and, you know, commit euthanasia? Well, let's go on to the next story. Right. This is about Israel, and it's written on the Gatestone Institute, which I follow. And it's Gwithian Prins, Prins, wrote this piece. And Prins, let me see at the bottom here of the article. It's a long article, and I encourage you to read the whole thing. He's Professor Emeritus at the London School of Economics and a past member of the British Chief of the Defense Staff's Strategy Advisory Panel. And what he is saying is that we've reached such a point with this woke that Hamas is being justified, and at the same time, Israel is being demonized. Now, he's specifically attacking a lot of the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation or company, for Israeliophobia, which is a determination to see everything in the eyes of Hamas and demonizing Israel. This International Court of Justice, which ruled essentially suggesting that Israel could be committing genocide by going after Hamas. Remember, it was Hamas' October 7th attack, brutally killing some 1,200 Jews and Arabs. Anyone who was there, they killed, and Bedouins. There was a massive massacre, and people were largely not able to defend themselves because a lot of people in Israel have been disarmed by the Israeli left. So the BBC has been portraying this International Court of Justice as a higher court than any national court. And under the guise of human interest, the BBC repeatedly broadcast prurient details of injuries to individual children in Gaza. Why? It's intended to shock and anger the listener and to demonize Israel. It leaves these implications unspoken, hence deniable. The problem is also that the Hamas is using a lot of these civilians as a shield. And so the more civilians that are killed in Gaza, the better Hamas feels, because it gives more evidence to these internationalists that Israel is committing genocide. Now, Hamas has nowhere to hide under Geneva war crime rules, and this interim ruling of the International Court of Justice is troublesome, because while they did not make an objective finding that Israel was committing genocide, the court implied that Israel might in the future commit that genocide when there's no evidence of an intention to meet the criteria of genocide. Israel's not trying to wipe out a race or a group of people, an ethnic group of people. And it's not like the Holocaust, where Hitler was attacking Jews to eradicate Jews from the face of the earth. But Hamas is the one with the homicidal interest in its own Gaza civilian residents. What Prinz writes here is, bluntly, for its purposes, the more civilians that are killed, the better, because their deaths can be blamed on the IDF, Israel Defense Force, and added to the undifferentiated Butcher's Bill, in which the Western media take figures issued by Hamas uncritically as being all civilian. Hamas repeatedly obstructed the Gazans trying to evacuate in the southern Gaza, blocking the route, even shooting them, when before the first phase of ground operations began, the IDF gave civilians notice to get out. So this is what he's calling essentially a devil's spreadsheet, which brings the ethical terms of engagement front and center. Israel did not bring war on 7th October. It was a just cause, fighting by just means, in order to defend the people of Israel. But in this woke intersectionality, the victims of the Gaza victims, the civilians, are purportedly victims of white Jewish colonialism. So the Arabs or the Muslims are licensed to do freely any depraved act, and by definition, Jews can never be victims. Now, let me explain that. Intersectionality in this woke Babbly book, means how many different cases of oppression do you have? So if you're a woman, you're oppressed because you're a woman. If you're black, you've got two, that's intersectionality, they intersect. So now you've got both, you're oppressed because you're black and because you're a woman. Then if you're a black woman transsexual, you've got a third instance of transsectionality. Your score is improving here on the oppressed list. You become privileged to the woke. If you have had a past life and you're living the past life of an animal today, reincarnated, now you've got another one because you're being oppressed as an animal. So this is insanity. But what it is that because the Jews are white, because they are occupying Israel, they are colonialists in the eyes of this woke Neo-Marxism. And this is, again, nonsense. The Jews have been oppressed everywhere in the world they've been, and that they have the right of self-defense. I've always said wars don't solve any problem, and wars cause the next war. And I hesitate to think that there may not be sometimes a solution other than war, but it's got to be a last cause, but last alternative to self-defense. At any rate, when you get this type of a narrative forming, you see it in the universities. You see the university students coming out and protesting as they are for Hamas, and you realize that the radical Islamic factions have become themselves Neo-Marxism, because, again, they all are uniting in a satanic agenda, which is aimed at violence and destruction of Jews and the eradication of Israel. They give Israel and Jews no right to the territory of Israel, despite the biblical covenant that goes back to Moses and Abraham, where Israel, this is their native land. And these natives, the Muslims, they're not all Arabs. Arabs are a particular group. Saudi Arabians are more the nomadic groups are often Bedouin. There are many different groups in the Middle East. They're not all Arabs. They may all be Muslim, but they are not all from the same ethnic derivation. And again, because they are people of color, they are already the oppressed and therefore the ones who are privileged in this woke hierarchy of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So therefore, you've got to have someone hired because of their race, and another one hired because of their sex, another one hired for whatever reason, and these combined do not have to be qualified for the jobs, but you can check off the intersectionality boxes to know you've got the right mix, which is inherently discriminatory because you've got white supremacists as the demons and always the demons, and that's a racial argument, a hardening of the racial conflicts. So under the Obama woke, we have now become more radicalized on race, and Saul Alinsky, writing in the 1960s, Rules for Radicals, urged for a revolution to rub raw these social conflicts and these cultural conflicts in order to create dissent, disillusion, chaos, crisis, etc. And there's no one better to create absolute confusion than the schizophrenic woke, where you have to celebrate their bizarre sexuality, regardless of what it is: whips, chains, sacrilegious sex acts, bizarre attire, men as women. And the idea here that this is going to be accepted by the world, has to be celebrated by the world. If these people want to do these things, I think by and large, most people would say, go ahead and do all that nonsense. There's always been a small fringe of humanity that has engaged in bizarre sexual behavior. It doesn't mean that needs to be celebrated or normalized, and that's the mistake that's being made. Okay, now if we go to this next story, which is really complementary, and I want to cover this theme here with putting a good deal of time on it today. There is another argument about the World Economic Forum totalitarians, and this is on American Thinker. I have contributed to American Thinker. I'm not right at the moment writing on it as extensively as I would like because I've just been swamped with other things, including creating a Substack. But here's the point. This article, which is written by, let me get the author here. Let's see. The author is J.B. Shurk, S-H-U-R-K, who writes pretty regularly on American Thinker, saying totalitarianism is the warm bath in which civilization slits its wrists. It develops the people with petty rules, strange dogmas, immoral duties, and forced sacrifices. It warms its victims with intoxicating promises of the government's false love. It leaves the citizen naked, stripped first of his free will, when the thoughts in his head and finally anything he once called his own is under challenge. It slowly dispossesses each person of his personhood till the population withers into frail, colorless facsimiles of the bleak, omnipresent state. Without the courage to act, the desire to think, the wisdom to pray, or the consciousness to object, human purpose disappears. Society is extinguished of its vitality, creativity, spirituality, and mirth until it slips beneath the water and stops breathing. It's a very powerful image of suicide, and I think it is intended, this whole woke, to destroy. That's the point of my book, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. This is a malware of the brain. It's like malware in your computer. The brain doesn't work well after this nonsense is drummed into it as an ideology in the schools. One more paragraph. This was the story of Lenin's Soviet Union and the imprisoned nations trapped behind Stalin's Iron Curtain. Story of Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, Mao's China, and Pol Pot's Cambodia. It's been the story of Kim's North Korea, Castro's Cuba, Chavez's Venezuela, and the Ayatollah's Iran. For over a century, humanity has endured one form of barbarous totalitarianism after the next. It slithers into unsuspecting countries, often hiding behind the mask of democratic elections. And again, they're talking about, the Democratic Party, which is a neo-Marxist party, is saying Trump is anti-democratic. Anything they don't like, they twist the language and forming themselves as democratic, saying they're the truth, and anything that disagrees with them is misinformation. So this represents itself as just one political party of many before announcing itself as the only party for all. It seeks to eliminate opponents in stages. First it proselytizes, then it intimidates, and finally it murders. With a couple 100 million victims over the last century alone, it is a governing philosophy that specializes in mass executions, dark prison cells, killing fields, and concentration camps. Totalitarianism infiltrates society with lies and builds nothing but the machinery of death. That's so true. I mean, again, it's so much blood resulting. You should read the Little Black Book of communism, which was very popular in Europe about a decade ago or so. And you see this strange Schwab's World Economic powwows, he's writing, where they organize how best to dominate and manipulate their respective national populations without even the pretense of a democratic mandated constitutional legitimacy. This time around, totalitarianism returns to the West, not on the heels of invasion and annexation, but rather with the light bacchanalial celebrations in the crisp air of the Swiss Alps. It seemed that the only thing aspiring Western tyrants learned from the 20th century's carnage is that would-be totalitarians should not waste resources fighting one another when their common enemy has always been the people. During the age of monarchies and empires, the easiest way to conquer foreign lands was to purchase the nobles. That is what the World Economic Forum and its cabal of globalist operators do today. This is so true. This is exactly what it is. There's nothing democratic about labeling dissent as disinformation. There's nothing democratic about conspiring with tech companies to censor public debate as hate speech. There's nothing democratic about imposing top-down climate change regulations to do nothing other than strip property rights and centralized economic control. By the way, there's been articles out over the past few hours about how climate scientists are saying that the measurements, we've covered this. We did an interview with Willie Soon, who is a brilliant scientist, who said that the weather monitoring stations, the temperature stations that the World Economic Forum applauds and the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change of the UN, has advocated that the world is getting warmer. Michael Mann is on trial today in the defamation trial, and with Mark Stein, and that trial is going on because Michael Mann did falsify his data. It's validated in the emails from the North Anglian computers in ClimateGate. But now we see farmers that can't grow their fields. We exhale carbon dioxide. And so therefore, euthanizing the West is what they're all about. And in fact, Harari makes that clear. There's not the whole idea that the World Economic Forum totalitarianism is aimed at depopulation is the key element we have to understand. And as these governments turn to depopulation, in fact, Henry Kissinger in the 1970s wrote a National Security Memorandum 200, in which he said depopulation was the official U.S. government policy. So we are dealing with a very dark era right now. Now, Chris, I want to go here to Bishop Vigano. It's, people do say Vigano, but in Italian, you pronounce it Vigano. And we can show his picture. I'd like you to hear just a clip or two of his voice in Italian. We're only going to play about 5 seconds of this, but he gave this message on January 27th, and I want to review the message. And he delivered it in Italian. Let's hear him speak for a minute. And by the way, this is in his home or his office. And notice that right on his right, he's got St. Michael the Archangel attacking the demons, Satan. And that's fundamental to Bishop Vigano's message, is that we are at a moment in history fighting a spiritual war, and it may be the final eternal war, where God unleashes St. Michael, the angels, to defeat these demons and lock them in hell for a long period of time. Hopefully that will be the result. So, Christopher, I'll play just a few seconds of Bishop Vigano.
Cari amici, permettetemi anzitutto di ringraziare il dottor Francesco Toscano.
Okay, that's good. Just wanted to hear that he's speaking. He's vital. He's very active, and he's opposing Pope Francis as a neo-Marxist. What he's doing is he's thanking Dr. Francesco Toscano for the invitation to speak at the National Congress, which was a meeting being held in Italy, in Rome, on the 27th and 28th of this month, January 2024. It was the panel was called Democrazia Sovrana e Popolare, which means, a democracy which is sovereign and of the people. Okay, so again, that's what he's championing. He says, I'm going to read just a couple of paragraphs. He said, we are now facing an epical threat in the form of a coup d'etat perpetrated by the globalist elite. This coup d'etat has only recently appeared in full evidence, but the rambling statements of participants in the Davos Forum that has just ended are the result of a subversive project carried out for decades, a project that is based on lies, blackmail, and corruption. Then he outlines each of these lies. All the reasons given by the globalist network to legitimize their actions are false, or rather, they are false pretexts that deliberately hide other unmentionable reasons. There's nothing scientific or rational about the measures taken to address recent crises. So there's a willingness to hide their criminal intentions behind flimsy arguments, in pursuit of which we only waste time and energy. So he goes on to name some, including the crises in Ukraine, global warming, etc. And he said that all of these have the sole purpose of making any opposition impossible in the name of emergencies that have been pre-planned down to the smallest detail. Okay, so looking at the Ukrainian war as an opportunity by the NATO group, our State Department, which has wanted to push NATO to the borders of Russia, both Finland and Sweden, and Ukraine. Why is this a bad idea? Because Russia, for hundreds of years, has needed access to the Atlantic, which they can get through the Baltic Sea in the north. That's Denmark and Sweden, Finland and Sweden, Finland predominantly, but in the south through Ukraine to the Black Sea. Lying. They say they're here to save us and to help us and to bring democracy, when their only purpose is to destroy human population. Blackmail. In order to achieve the transition of the population to the globalist agenda, in which everything is in the hands of the elite, the architects of the Great Reset act deliberately, step by step. Their first step is to place their product, he calls it a product because that's what they sell, alongside what we already have or can have by our own means, and whether it be called Canadian genetically engineered wheat that is combined with organic wheat from small farms, private health care combined with public health care, electric cars added to gas cars, smart working from a remote location combined with work in the office, it appears that the new alternative, which has a cost in economic and human terms for the user, is not imposed but simply presented as a possibility. Once they've succeeded in introducing their product, they make sure the first option we had is in fact unsustainable because it's become too expensive or hampered by EU regulations. Obviously, cost increases are intentionally caused using crises and managed as emergencies as the pretext. We find ourselves no longer having free of charge at reasonable prices the goods and services we previously had. We are forced to accept that we can only have their product whose price and conditions of delivery they decide. But this is a forced one, and it's forced through the third issue, which is corruption. That gets the active cooperation of the political class, the media, the judiciary, the police, the teachers, the doctors, and even the ecclesiastical hierarchy that has become the servant of the elite, and these lies and blackmail would not have been possible. If you look at those who hold positions of government and who hold the highest levels of power in various institutions today, universities and media, you'll find almost exclusively people from the World Economic Forum's young global leaders for tomorrow. Klaus Schwab openly and brazenly announced this. Quote, "We have managed to infiltrate all Western governments." How? With money, of course, because they create the money and even print it, since central banks are private companies headed by a few well-known investment funds, and in turn chaired by members of the World Economic Forum. BlackRock and Vanguard, two investment firms, huge ones, own the public debt of many nations, which they also blackmail through rating agencies or through pressure from the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the European Central Bank. And when the money doesn't arrive, electoral fraud, show trials, suicides, and accidents happen. Okay, so the whole issue here is evil. And he calls out Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, George Soros, and their accomplices. Now I'm going to read one more paragraph because this is the crux of the Archbishop's message. This is a battle that cannot be fought with exclusively human weapons because spiritual powers are taking part in it that feed on the hatred of God, of our Lord Jesus Christ, and of human beings, whom they envy. Unlike demons, they merited to be redeemed by the incarnation of the eternal Son of the Father. These powers also hate creation, which the Lord made freely available to us. It is gratuitously available because God's work is gratuitous, the fruit of magnificence and generosity, while everything that comes from the devil has a price. It is a commodity to be exchanged, something that can be bought and sold. Saying to fight the enemy according to his falsified rules is absurd and ruinous. Rather than fight him rather by contrasting lies with truth. All my books are now recently been called The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. This is thetruthcentral.com. And Vigano is saying, fight the devil, fight Satan, by contrasting lies with the truth. Vile blackmail can contrast with the will to do the good. Corruption, combat with honesty. St. Paul also tells us, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's Romans 12:21. And this epical struggle and this clash between light and darkness, even those who are not Christians can be your allies if with honesty and courage they understand that the very foundations of the law of nature, respect for the sacredness of life, the defense of the natural family, the right of parents to educate their children, and the protection of property, labor, and business. All of these are in danger if we don't rally together spiritually. And the key to that is the natural law, that there is a rule here on earth, and that rule is God ordained. and it defines good and bad, not this blending. We don't, the binaries are what the woke attack. You can't have men and women because that's binary. So therefore, sex, which is binary, your male or female organs, well, that's transcended by gender, which is how you perform in sex. And then gender is virtually infinite. Make up whatever version you want. And we have to celebrate it. He said, be strong, dear friends, and do not be intimidated by those who want you to believe on the basis of a colossal fraud that everything is decided and irrevocable. This dystopian war of slavery and death that the globalist delirium wants to build can be avoided if we know how to unite under the cross of Christ. For it is only before the cross that these wicked people lose all power and show themselves for what they really are. It's time for a great awakening, and I'm calling this trilogy I'm writing a great awakening. The third book will be on transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and perpetual life extension. I hope I get to be able to write that book this year. Chris, you want to make a comment? You're seeing Archbishop Viganò right there. And then I'm going to cover one more story before we wrap up.
I have to say, this gentleman has a lot of guts. I mean, to challenge the hierarchy at this point and really point out what actually is challenging two hierarchies at this point: the Pope himself and the people around him from the Vatican outward. And you're talking about these very powerful people in the World Economic Forum and how they're now kind of working together at this point. I always wondered, and have you always wondered why Pope Benedict or Pope Benedict left as early as he did?
Yes, I've read a lot of books in Italian on it. Antonio Socci, Socci, has written many books on the subject, arguing that essentially it was a coup d'etat within the church. And the coup d'etat from, the woke left of the church, and then what Bishop Vigano would say are these demons that are now trying to penetrate all of our life with satanic content, and it will result in mass murder. We're headed, for whatever reason, the Biden administration seems, and the State Department and the Pentagon, the woke Pentagon with generals wearing dresses and wigs, seem to want to have a war with Russia. And Putin does not seem to want to have a war. So that this whole idea that we're going to create, the Ukraine, and now there's talk about what are we going to do now that 3 soldiers have been killed by a drone and we're attributing it to Iran? Well, where's the proof it was Iran? Let's get that proof firmly established. First of all, Iran is the terror master. They're funding Hezbollah in Lebanon. They're funding Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank. They're funding the Houthi rebels in Yemen. But the point is, we are in a third world war already. And this whole woke agenda has got to be defeated. It's got to be defeated. And I want to cover one more story before we kind of wrap up here. And that is that, just hold on a second, I'm going to pull it up right now. That, 1 second. Okay, I just have to cover this story because, again, it's amazing to me. The Biden administration is going to delay the approval of new liquid natural gas terminals in the United States. And this is insanity. It's a major victory, they say, for environmental advocacy groups in the United States and Europe, which want to limit our ability to have hydrocarbon fuels readily available. That's what this is all about. They want on this nonsense of global warming because hydrocarbon fuels emit carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is only 0.04% of the atmosphere. 600 million years ago, there was more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than today, and we've had ice ages in that last 600 million years. Carbon dioxide follows warming. It doesn't cause warming. It's all false science. But this is a blow for Texas, and are they punishing Texas because this decision to delay the approval of new natural liquid gas terminals? You need these terminals to be able to load liquid natural gas onto ocean-going cargo ships that will carry the liquid natural gas to Europe. This is punishing Texas, who's the world's third largest liquid natural gas exporter. And they're punishing Texas for defending the southern border, which the Biden administration will not do. The Biden administration say, until you give us more money for Ukraine and money for Israel, we will not secure the border. That's insanity. That's why Mayorkas is being impeached today. Impeachment is bringing in the charges. Removal from office is a conviction in the trial in the Senate. So energy experts are agreeing that this benefits America's enemies and harms our allies. The Wall Street Journal called it an election year gift to Russia, pointing out that U.S. liquid natural gas exports have increased by about 31 billion cubic feet per month, 8.7% increase since January 2022, which has helped Europe wean itself off Russian energy and reduce natural gas prices. If not for the United States, liquid natural gas political support in Europe for Ukraine might find itself on citizens, flogged and citizens who are shivering in the cold. A new major Russian natural gas export facility is scheduled to come online this year. The world's third largest natural gas producer has revived construction on a liquid natural gas facility that aims to complete next year. The U.S. surpassed Qatar last year as the world's top liquid natural gas exporters, but new profits could help the Doha region in its lead. Okay, so again, this is a anti-people, anti-growth measure. And I'm troubled to see, troubled's a mild way to put it, the Biden administration going this direction with a war, not only on people, but a war on energy, a war on our nature of life, a war on God. These people in the Biden administration, thank you, Barack Obama, and thank you, Michelle, who appears getting ready to run for president to replace sleepy Joe Biden. He can go to sleep on the beach now. No one's going to care. He's been doing that most of his administration when he hasn't been trying to figure out how to get out of a room or to stop sniffing little girls. Okay, now let's emphasize a couple things about the website. We are changing it now. I've created a Substack, and Chris will demonstrate that. My Substack is growing and being populated with new material. And it's a good Substack. I think if you take a look at it, that's what it looks like. And I'm posting a lot of articles on abiotic oil. We're going to post a lot of articles on this Neo-Marxism. I'm trying to take the books I've written and break them up into bite-sized pieces so that you can get the ideas of the book through these various Substack postings. I'm also selling a lot of my author's copies, and I'm doing it through these tools, which are these e-pipes. I'll show you what they look like. Go to the top here and pull it down. You can see these e-pipes. These are applications that work on your cell phone. They actually also work on the internet. Very easy to change the content of these. I'm going to be starting to demonstrate these as well. Atomic Iran, which I wrote in 2005, and Iran today is doing what I was predicting it would do in 2005, especially now that it's gotten money from, thank you, Obama and John Kerry, and may have a nuclear weapon already that is ready to use. I don't know for sure. Those e-pipes also were selling the Black Gold Stranglehold. I will sign these and send them to you. You can purchase them right on the e-pipe. Get your copy of the free book. The coming global crash will create an historic gold rush by calling Swiss America at 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Also take a look at the My Vital C, which is a product I've been taking, My Vital C, for now 5 years. And it has remarkable longevity properties. Chris will show it to you again on the website. It's a formula for cats and dogs as well as human beings. It comes with this miracle molecule, carbon 60, an atom of 60 carbon atoms, a molecule of 60 carbon atoms, arranged in a cage structure around the nucleus. It is only discovered about 40 years ago, and it really is more predominant in outer space than it is on Earth. It comes in avocado oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. I prefer it in olive oil. As I tell you, I'm 77 years old, and I've probably never been more active any time in my lifetime. So take a look at this. We've got a lot of very good products here up on the website. We're also broadcasting in a lot of different channels. Take a look at the upper right-hand corner, the right hair growth products from My Vital C, skin products, etc. And these are, take a look up in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see all the different iHeart, Spotify, different channels that we're on, Apple Podcasts, Rumble. We're doing very well on Rumble. Please follow us there. We can post everything. We don't have to excise anything from the show. We're still on YouTube until they remove us. And we're going to continue doing podcasts every weekday. In wrapping up, God always wins. God's going to win here too. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be a last battle with Satan. And it is, I think, going to be a vicious battle. But we will win because God did not create the human race to fail. We must do our part. And we begin with 2 Chronicles 7:14. We've got to get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for these millions of babies we've allowed to be killed in the womb. God gave them life. Our demons, abortionists, cut them up and sold their body parts. They're trying to do late-term abortions to preserve the baby's body parts more fully formed. Get more money for those. Also, taking God out of the schools, out of our hearts, out of our marriages. These are disastrous formulas for death, disease, ruin, and we're going down the path of great lies, following Satan, who is the prince of lies. This will end. We'll have a judgment of God, but I believe in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. It's Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Tuesday. It's January 30th, 2024. We're doing podcasts every weekday. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. God bless.